Xbox's backwards compatibility program is getting beefed up. On February 17th, Xbox introduced what they call FPS Boost. They describe it as employing, quote, a variety of new methods for nearly doubling and in a few instances quadrupling the original frame rate on select titles. We partnered closely with developers to enhance the experience while maintaining the game's original intent. And while not applicable to all games, these new techniques can push game engines to render more quickly for a buttery smooth experience beyond what the original game might have delivered due to capabilities of the hardware at the time, end quote. The Xbox Wire post continues saying, quote, Far Cry 4, new Super Lucky's Tale, Sniper Elite 4, UFC 4, and Watch Dogs 2. We chose these initial collection of titles not only because they are popular among fans, but to highlight several different ways that FPS Boost can improve your experience. For example, new Super Lucky's Tale can now run at up to 120 frames per second, and UFC 4 can now deliver improved frame rate performance specifically on Xbox Series S and can now run at 60 FPS. This is just the beginning. We will announce and release more titles featuring FPS Boost soon, as we will roll out new menu icons and system settings in an upcoming system update. Starting this spring, you can go into Manage Game section for any title where you'll be presented with a new compatibility options button that will allow you to toggle FPS Boost as well as Auto HDR on and off. There will also be a new indicator informing you when a game is running with FPS Boost when you are hitting the Xbox button on your controller. Also, for those who want to test this out when it comes this spring, new Super Lucky's Tale and Sniper Elite 4 are available via Game Pass for you to try out. So keep that in mind when this update drops. Carrick, you said you were able to tinker around with this, right? You were part of the preview program, so it's all you, man. You talk, we listen.
Yeah, I was sort of mad because I tried to get some extra data, and I wanted there to be an icon now, and there isn't an icon now, so it was a little confusing on when some of these were being updated. But basically, yeah, I got in the preview program, and I did a podcast on it. You can watch. I was going to do video, but I was just like, there was some difficulties behind the scenes of sort of trying to get some of the data I wanted. But I will say that basically it does almost identical to the Hashin. Is it Hashin patent? I think, no, that's not what it is. There's basically a guy who did the backwards compatibility. He patented it under his name. But basically with backwards compatibility, he patented taking mip maps and fooling the system into thinking you're using the shitty distance mip map when on the new systems you're using the up close one. So it's like a virtual file system, almost like a mod organizer for Skyrim. So you have these files over here, and the system thinks those files are in your main game, but they're not. So whenever it calls this mip map, instead of calling the far away swing and sign texture, it, no matter how far away, calls the up close one. So you get a much higher def. And this does the same thing. Strangely enough, it just does it with FPS. So it basically draws a frame and then tells the system, hey, bro, you didn't draw a frame. And so it immediately draws another one.
Very cool.
And it gets as many as it can in that allotted frame, which is why Lucky is 120. Some games are 60. It depends on their latency input and stuff. But, dude, Far Cry 4, the problem is, dude, is they're not the best resolution games. Far Cry 4 isn't a normal resolution game. It's not 1080p. It's like, I think it's 1440 by 1080. A really weird, where you have horizontal being more than the vertical, and so you get a bit of a blurriness. But it's running at 60 smooth. Which is, it is a massive difference there.
Now, these are coming in via not updates to the game, right? These are just like, hey, our AI is able to improve how they perform.
That's another weird thing. They said reset the system so that it appears, reset the system so something happened. But I reset it and there was no update. It was almost like, I don't know if the shit's been there for a while, but all I had to do was be in the preview. And that doesn't require an update. It requires you signing into the preview. So yeah, it's something they do where they basically, they just fool it and they get right. They were talking about it, but it's like they take the buffer of the frame and then they're like, hey, you didn't draw a frame. And it goes through everything all over again and then redraws another frame. And now instead of 30, you have 60 because you're doubling up. And so it won't fuck up like Skyrim. If anybody's played Skyrim in the old days, they've now fixed it. But if you went above 60, it would go batshit. You'd have loaves of bread flying through the world because the physics were tied to the frame rate. And so that's why they also say it won't work on every game. Because you want to make sure you don't have a game where the physics are like, I've thrown a piece of bread at your face, it's halfway to you, and then the game is like, oh, draw again, and now it's actually, what happens is the motion is doubled, so the speed is faster. And so what happens is, that's what happens in Skyrim. When you walk into a building, sometimes you would hear like shit going, tick, 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 and that's because it was being magnified, basically. It was just like, it was shaking, and there was like just too many guesses on the math of where it was. So yeah, it's awesome, dude. It's not CPU, GPU being faster. It's actually not only that, I'll say. It's an actual programming technique, and it's fucking awesome. And I hope we see it on everything, because it's not required to be on Xbox. Somebody else could, now that they sort of know what's going on, there's probably a way to, you know, for PlayStation, Nintendo,
Nice.
yeah.
Good. Yeah, especially Nintendo. That'd be great for them, right? Because that's the biggest thing. You know, and I've been playing Fire Emblem Three Houses every now and then, and it's all right. I enjoy it, but you know, aside from my opinion on the game, the biggest challenge I've had going back to my Switch after really next gen launched, it happened with Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity. Is you play it and it just feels old, and so Nintendo is starting to do things with the cloud, like you're getting cloud edition of Hitman 3 and Control. And so this, I would be very excited to see them get their hands on, because it's the FPS, man, is what I really, really struggle with. And if it's an AI technique, a programming technique, that would be something that I think they could probably try to squeeze in, because it's not stressing out the hardware anymore. At least that's my interpretation.
Well,
as
it
a noob.
It's just not the main thing. You know how in the old days when you bought a new video card, you knew you had headroom? It's not just headroom, is what I'm saying. It's headroom plus them intelligently figuring out a way to fool the system. And so I don't know exactly, you know, what game, like that's the thing, is we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future, because Lucky is 4K, by the way, which was weird. Lucky is 4K native, and now is 120 FPS 4K native. So you're like, all right, that's higher than Far Cry. Why is Far Cry not 120 if it's not even 4K? It's not even close to 4K. So there's obviously some stuff behind the scenes, too, with each graphics engine. But yeah, it'll just be cool. Yeah, we don't know. The cool thing is what about next time? You know, a Nintendo developer sees this and goes, okay, for the Switch Pro, we might, you know, do something like this.
I was going to suggest that next.
I'm excited for it, because it's not just power. It's just like checkerboard rendering for the PS4, which was able to do more than you thought it could. And I'm such a huge fan of that kind of stuff. I love it.
Yeah, so my thing is the titles they picked, I probably won't be able to try this for a while. Just I don't really have interest in any of them.
Yeah, they're not great.
Not
Far
grabby
Cry 4,
titles.
maybe, I guess.
Yeah, they're not grabby titles. For me, what's funny is you say Far Cry 4. I thought Super Lucky's Tale. I was like, I guess. I mean, that looked interesting enough.
Yeah.
You know, I think a Fallout 4 would really benefit from something like this. Before Xbox Series X and S launched, they said, hey, Fallout 4 will be 60 FPS, and there is that mod that uncaps the frame rate. You know, we've talked about that a lot. But in the terms of officially doing so to speak, I'm very surprised that this was not in the game batch there, just because a lot of people have been talking about it and having this desire for it, which I get. Fallout 4 is a great game. I think it's always fun to go back to.
Dishonored.
Yeah, I think everyone in Bethesda's library could just benefit from it in general.
Yeah. I mean, look at a Castle Wolfenstein or something suddenly getting, you know, 120 FPS. That'd be pretty insane to see, like, you know, 120 FPS is becoming a thing out of the blue too, which is weird, because you get 30 still, you get 60 with performance, and then randomly you get this jump to 120 that not only natively for like Gears, but this, which is using something, I don't know. It's an interesting FPS, because most people don't even have a TV that can come close to that. Or some people don't even have monitors that can come close to that.
Yeah, I think we've seen it in Gears 5, we've seen it in Ori, Will and the Wisps, and now we're seeing it here in Super Lucky still. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what they do with this. A lot of people, because, you know, we knew this was coming, and a lot of people had an inkling of it, and what happened was people were expecting, like, new titles to get added via backwards compatibility, this is very separate from it. This is improving the performance of it. And I think this is great, because as you've noticed with our backwards compatible picks of the week, at least I personally like to dip into the 360 a lot. I think, you know, there's a value there. But now what this does is it makes it more appealing in our show, and I think in general, to discuss the Xbox One library, where they're going to push things forward, where now you could say, hey, Far Cry 4, if you're a console owner, this is best played on Xbox. And that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
it's something that we'll definitely keep a lookout for. And I think it expands our options. A lot of people worry at times, or I shouldn't even say a lot of people, a couple of people have written in saying, like, hey, are we ever going to run out of games? And I mean, we already have a new Game Pass haul to talk about today. And the backwards compatibility library, I think they'll eventually expand it. So especially since they're continuing to focus on it. That's what, to me, the breath of fresh air here is, okay, they haven't dropped it, right? We've seen them look to the future, looked into these acquisitions, look into spending money, when their big initiative starting in 2015 was this backwards compatibility. And obviously, I think the biggest draw could be adding more games to that library, but the fact that they're continuing to improve it is a really good sign. That makes me very happy. So unless you have anything else to add based off your experience, we can move on.
No, it's just cool stuff. Excited for the future.
Hell yeah.